Okay, so let's finish this topic by talking about the fate of the end products of photosynthesis, as in what would then happen to the end products of photosynthesis, right? Okay, just a recap. We said that green leaves manufacture starch and oral sugars during photosynthesis, right? So they in turn give out oxygen as a byproduct, right? So the end products of photosynthesis are starch and what? And oxygen, right? Firstly, the oxygen just quickly escapes from the leaf through the stomata openings, right? The oxygen passes out of the leaf by the process of diffusion, right? It diffuses into the surrounding air, that is the atmosphere, right? So we're saying that the microscopic pores or holes on the underside surface of the leaf, and these are called stomata, and in plural they're known as stomata in plural, and if it's one we call it stoma, right? So we're saying that every leaf has got some openings underneath which are responsible for gaseous exchange, right? During photosynthesis, that's the gateway for oxygen. It quickly escapes into the atmosphere through the stomata openings, right? These pores are also the ones that allow carbon dioxide entry during the process of photosynthesis, that is during the day, right? But at night, you see that plants respire at night. We'll talk about respiration in a couple of lessons to come. We are saying that at night plants they respire, but during the day they photosynthesize, right? So if it's daytime, the stomata are now responsible for the entry of if it's daytime, they are responsible for the entry of oxygen and the exit of the entry of carbon dioxide during the day, and the exit of oxygen, right? But if it's the night, it's vice versa. Now they are responsible for the entry of oxygen and the exit of carbon dioxide when they are carrying out the process of respiration. Don't worry about that, we'll talk about it soon. Okay, so that's what happens to oxygen. Oxygen quickly diffuses into the atmosphere, right, through the stomata openings. Then the other end product is carbon dioxide, is carbohydrate, which can be in the form of starch or sugars, right? The carbohydrate molecules that are formed during photosynthesis are transported to other parts of the plant. Because we say that photosynthesis it occurs in the leaves, right? So all other parts of the plant will need the same carbohydrates that are being formed during the process of photosynthesis. So the carbohydrate molecules are going to be transported to all parts of the plant. Some parts of the plant have no chlorophyll and thus cannot photosynthesize. We can talk of the roots. The roots do not have chlorophyll, but they still need the what? They still need the food that is being formed by the plant. Most stems do not have chlorophyll, but they still need what? They still need the food that is being formed by the leaves. So carbohydrates are transported as sugars or as glucose, as these molecules are soluble, right? So the sugars are transported from the leaves through the microscopic tubes to the other parts of the plant. You see, we'll give names to this, and the name of the microscopic tubes is actually the phloem vessels. We'll talk about it when you talk about the transport in plants in detail, right? So we're saying that the sugars are transported from the leaves through the microscopic tubes to other parts of the plant. So this process is called translocation, right? As we are transporting carbohydrates, or when we are transporting sugars to all parts of the plant, we call that translocation, right? You're supposed to be noting this. Then the carbohydrates can either be used immediately to supply energy to the plant, or they are stored. And when they are stored, they're going to be stored. They're first supposed to be stored. They're first supposed to be converted into what? Into starch, because we agreed that we cannot store sugars because they are soluble. right? Because they are soluble. So we need to convert the sugars into starch first before we can actually store them, because starch is insoluble, is an insoluble compound. It's very difficult to transfer or to transport, right? The starch is stored in the leaves as a source of energy at night when the plant is now is now respiring, or in special organs. You see that when you're talking about probably the sweet potatoes, you see that, or even the potatoes themselves, most of the energy is going to be stored in the roots, which are going to be developing now into the food organ into the food part that you're going to be eating as animals, right? Some seeds, some food is going to be stored in seeds, some in fruits, some in roots, some in tubers, right? For example, potatoes contain large amounts of starch. For tubers, you see probably sugarcane. We're going to be seeing most of the starch contained in the tubers, right? In the fruits, fruits, right? Like in apples, in mango trees and stuff, right? When it's carbohydrates may also be converted into structural molecules in the plant, right? Cellulose is one such strong structure compound formed by carbohydrate, right? It is used to make up cell walls in plants and help to give plants support. When you're talking about the plant cell, I'm pretty sure that you mentioned something about the cell wall, right? The cell wall, which is the one that covers the whole plant cell. So that is formed of what? That is formed from these carbohydrates that you are forming during photosynthesis. So cellulose makes up the fibrous parts of plants, right? The fiber in plants like carrots, sugarcane, and mangoes, right, forms an essential part in the human diet. So we're saying that all fiber comes from all this fiber comes from cellulose, right? It's made up of cellulose. That's basically what we are talking about. So we just had some time to talk about what happens to the end products of photosynthesis. The first bit was to mention the end products of photosynthesis, which are carbohydrates and oxygen. Then we talked about what happens to oxygen. It quickly escapes into the atmosphere by the process of diffusion in the stomata openings, through the stomata openings, right? And we talked again about carbohydrates, saying that they're going to be transported to all parts of the plant as sugars, or they're going to be stored as starch, because starch is insoluble, but sugars are actually what? Because starch is insoluble, but sugars are soluble, right? And we mentioned that they are transported through the process called translocation in the phloem vessels. We called them microscopic tubes in this lesson, right? That's pretty much it. Let's meet again in the next lesson.